Piggy Insolential Explained, let's begin! We start off Piggy Insolential episode 1 with some very well received exposition, which is being explained by this news reporter, where he goes over the infection, the whole safe zone, and then the insolence. And then it cuts to Detective G, who is the main focus of this episode, inside of an apartment, outside of the safe zone, until Officer Doggy reports finding an insolence member and cornering them in an alleyway. So Detective G rushes to the scene. Detective G decides to investigate the scene himself. Along the way, Giraffe finds this guy called Foxy, who used to work for the insolence. But because he left, he is willing to help Detective G find the insolence member. But Rash led them into a trap. It's just too bad that it fell completely flat on its face. Anyway, Giraffe arrests Rash, and Foxy decides that he's going to go back to his place and pack his things. Giraffe respectfully decides to let him do it, and in the morning, Detective G will bring Foxy to the safe zone. Later on, Giraffe is sleeping back at the apartment place that he is in, when suddenly, a loud explosion goes off. Giraffe leaves his room to see a whole pile of rubble blocking a way out. So he decides to take the long way because he doesn't really have a choice. But then he gets ambushed by an infected. But then he's saved by a security guard called Roast. Anyway, Roast and Giraffe decide to go into a safe room to avoid the infected. And they come to the very obvious realization that the insolence is behind this. So Giraffe starts looking for a way out. While being chased by the infected, they manage to reach the garage, but it turns out that it's locked. So they decide to look for another way out. And then they discover this basement area that Giraffe, I guess, knows. And while searching, Detective G finds a note by the insolence member that broke into the hotel. And Detective G comes to the realization that since Foxy is close by, and the insolents are close by, Foxy could most likely be in danger. So he goes around the place to escape while avoiding the second infected, and he manages to escape. So since Giraffe cleared the path, he waits for Roast to get to the surface. But then, Roast gets knocked out. So Giraffe goes down to investigate and brings an unconscious Roast back to the surface. When Roast wakes up, he decides that the best course of action is to go to the safe zone. But because of the whole thing with Foxy, Giraffe decides to go find Foxy. And Roast hesitantly follows behind him. Now for episode 2. Roast and Detective G make their way through an alleyway until they find Foxy's safe house. Giraffe looks around the place, but it turns out that Foxy is missing. But then Roast notices some footprints in the ground, so they decide to follow the footprints. On the way, Roast finds a mysterious VHS tape, and Giraffe finds a club weapon thing, I guess. And eventually they find Foxy. But something about Foxy is wrong. He isn't talking, and that is because Foxy is infected. But then the situation gets even worse when they get trapped in the alleyway. So the two manage to avoid the infected and get to a safe area. But Giraffe is upset that he let Foxy down. He promised Foxy that he would get him to safety, and he failed. But Roast, not fully understanding the situation, is annoyed at Giraffe and knew that they should have gone to the safe zone. So Roast decides to look around the alleyway, but then he gets chased by Foxy. And then Roast is cornered by Foxy and is forced to fight him. Giraffe comes in and helps him, and they manage to take him down for the meantime. The two go in a building and make up for that previous argument they had in that other building. So the two make their way through the alleyway while avoiding Foxy, until they find more ammo to stun Foxy. And that is what they do. So they lock Foxy in a small laundromat building, so then Giraffe can come back later on and cure Foxy. And so, Giraffe and Roast decide to find a safe place to stay for the night until Zizzy overhears them. And Zizzy is nice enough to let them stay at a safe house for the night. But Giraffe doesn't fully trust Zizzy. Roast, however, is able to trust Zizzy more. So Roast, however, manages to convince Giraffe to give Zizzy a chance. So Roast and Giraffe arrive at Zizzy's place, and Zizzy goes off to do stuff. Hey, wait a minute, there's no chairs, something's off about Zizzy. Anyways, Giraffe explains why he was so committed to Foxy in the first place in an emotional speech. before being rudely interrupted by some random infected that just had to be there. Anyway, they easily escape, and Roast could see why Giraffe was so unsure about Zizzy in the first place. And then Zizzy comes in and explains herself for why that infected was there in the first place. And Zizzy says that she needs grass to stop the infected. So they decide to go to a conveniently nearby store that has grass in it. Now for episode 3. So the group finally arrive at the store place. But something feels wrong. This very evidently does not look like a store. Now, Zizzy reasons that it's just the back of the store. So Zizzy cuts the tape, and they decide to split up and look around the place. So Roast and Zizzy go inside the store building, but something's off. Zizzy has not seen these lamps before. And to make things even worse, they see an infected. So they decide to hide from it. Zizzy explains her involvement with that infected, and that she cut its legs off. But somehow, the infected mouse has 2 legs again. Anyway, Mousy hears them and starts approaching. So they decide to move and explore the place while avoiding the infected. And by that, I mean Roast looks around the place while Zizzy waits for some grass. And that is until Roast finds an Insolence member called Billy. And with the confidence that Roast learned from Giraffe, Roast decides to confront Billy. And after they have a little conversation, Billy leaves. So Roast reluctantly decides to go after Billy. But then Roast comes to the realization that this area of the store was not told to him by Zizzy, which makes Roast start to get skeptical of her. Anyway, after going around the place, and eventually Roast catches up to Billy. Meanwhile, Billy is talking to a mysterious voice who opens a portal, which Billy goes through, and Roast decides to follow Billy. But what awaits him is a blue void, and a mysterious voice that greets Roast to the multiverse. Until it is cut short by the mysterious voice from earlier, who puts Roast in the dark dimension. Roast, as shocked as you would think he would be, walks around and finds Mousy? Mousy explains the dark dimension and why she is here in the first place. She is about to explain the Insolence's plan until Roast gets sent back to his universe. But then he finds the infected version of Mousy again, who is about to attack him. Until Zizzy comes in and saves him. Roast decides to go and look for Giraffe, but it turns out that Roast dropped his tape. So Roast goes in the direction that Giraffe went in, and he sees a vent, so he goes through the vent, and ends up in another mysterious underground area. And finally, Roast finds Giraffe. Meanwhile, Zizzy picks up the VHS tape that Roast dropped on the ground, and plays it on the TV. But hold on a second! Something is wrong with Giraffe. He is not talking. And that is because Giraffe is infected. Roast, being shocked, tries to escape, but he is trapped in a dead end. But then suddenly, a portal appears and saves Roast. Now that Detective G is gone, Roast comes to the realization that he needs to save Foxy for Giraffe. Roast then meets up with Zizzy and decides it's not worth going back to her safe place. So I guess off camera, Zizzy manages to find a way out, but it's not that big of a deal. So Zizzy asks, what happened to Giraffe? And Roast evidently answers her question. But Zizzy does not show very much remorse about Giraffe becoming infected. Zizzy explains why she doesn't really like the police and why they are completely useless. And then Zizzy walks off. Roast does not agree with Zizzy, but he does not have much of a choice because he has nowhere else to go. So Roast reluctantly follows Zizzy. Now, if you want to know what happens in episode 4, please go check it out. It would mean a lot to me. And yeah guys, bye.